All right, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Jock Talk. I'm Matt here along with Brock. How we doing, Brock?
I'm doing good now.
Good, good. I'm gonna say Brock's been dealing with Hurricane Hermine or Hermione for all you Harry Potter fans out there.
Hermione.
So we got a pretty good show for you guys here today. It's going to be a lot of college football with a little bit of NFL mixed in there for you. A couple of big games today and through the rest of the weekend. We'll start off with some of the games from today. A game that I picked, not to brag on myself, but kind of to brag on myself. Houston over Oklahoma was a really good game. Could have been a lot more lopsided than it actually was. Brock, did you get a chance to catch any of that game?
I did. I was able to catch like the second half of it. I was most impressed by Houston's rush defense and D line. That you were telling me watch number 10. Who was the other one? Number 94.
Number 94, my boy Cam.
Those two were flying across the field, sideline to sideline from the D line. They were impressive to watch.
That's right. Number 10, Brock just mentioned, is Ed Oliver. An interesting fact that I found out during today's telecast. Ed Oliver was the first 5-star prospect ever to go to a non-Power 5 school. So I thought that was really interesting. A top or a 5-star prospect not going to the ACC, SEC, Pac-12, Big 10, or Big 12. Committed to Houston, and he actually committed pretty early in his senior season as well. So he had a really good game. There were a couple times where he was chasing down the running backs on a screenplay. He's a big guy, but he was really agile. So I'm really excited to see what he has for the rest of the year. Number 94, a guy that I had circled last week. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to get to him. But Cameron Malveaux, got one of those New Orleans type names. So got to keep an eye out for. If you're looking for a comparison, think Robert Nkemdiche size, who just got drafted by the Cardinals out of Ole Miss. Think his size, but not the production. So he's a big dude, but he hasn't had the numbers quite yet that he should. But Cameron Malveaux, number 94, and Ed Oliver, number 10 for the Cougars. Really good game. Like I said, it could have been a lot more high scoring than it was. Me and Brock were talking about it throughout the game. Greg Ward Jr. was on fire on third down. However, he missed a bunch of deep throws to number 88, Dunbar Jr. I think it's Stephen Dunbar Jr. He beat the defense deep at least 4 times in the first half, but Greg Ward Jr. missed it. And they still won the game. So watch out for Greg Ward Jr., a dark horse Heisman candidate. He still had 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns today. So watch out for him. One interesting fact I will say, we always ask why do high-powered college teams risk going to these schools to play games where they could lose. Oklahoma scheduled this game a couple of years ago against Houston, but I'm going to ask you this, Brock, and it's a hard question to ask, but I'm going to ask you anyways. How much money do you think Oklahoma made for going to play this game at Houston?
Enough to pay for a few more scholarships, I would say.
Enough. Oklahoma made $1.3 million for playing at Oklahoma, and they lost. Now we'll get to this a little bit later, but this is going to affect the college football playoff in a huge way. I know Oklahoma was a hot college football playoff pick, but a couple of other games that went on today. Michigan trounced Hawaii today at the Big House. Jabril Peppers looked good. I'm sure you'll see the video later. We'll probably tweet it on our Twitter page. at Jock Talk WINC, but he hurdled the defender today. Their quarterback looked good. He doesn't have too much experience, but he started off shaky. Brock, I know you mentioned the Ohio State game earlier. We were talking. What was that game? 77-10. Was that the final?
That was the final.
But their fans kind of loud and obnoxious. But I mean, who can blame them? 77-10. That's a great game. I remember when the Badgers scored like 82 on Indiana. But again, no biggie for the Badgers. Speaking of the Badgers, I know you were a little bit lower on them than I was. However, I still did not have them winning this game today. But Wisconsin Badgers over the Louisiana State Tigers. I know you got to watch most of the game, Brock.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on it? What did you see? What did you like? What did you not like?
Oh, the thing I was most impressed with from the Badgers was their defensive front. They controlled that whole game. Even sometimes offensively, their O-line pushed them, especially in the start of the second half. They had 3 straight plays first downs. They dominated that first drive coming out of halftime, which was great to see. And then, like I said, their defensive line and their linebackers. I did like seeing their linebackers tackle Leonard Fournette in the open field. They held Leonard Fournette to an okay game. He didn't score too many or rush for too many yards, but they contained him and bottled him up really well. They forced him to pass, and we obviously saw the last play of the game. What happens when not very good quarterback throws up a wild thing, it gets picked off.
Let me say this quick before you keep on. You mentioned their linebackers. They had Chris Orr go out on the first play of the game, I believe, with a knee injury. We're still waiting to see what that looks like. Otherwise, they were also missing TJ Edwards, who was their leading tackler from returning from a year ago. So I agree with you. The defensive front 7 played really well. But it's something I think it's just going to get better as the weeks go on. This guy's name was called a bunch of times. I don't know if you were able to catch it at all, but let me get your opinion on TJ Watt. Yes, TJ Watt, younger brother of Derek, younger brother of JJ Watt. Did you get a chance to catch any of his plays?
Which one? He was all over the field. He was making plays. It must be in the Watt's blood to play defense, except for Derek, who wanted to go play fullback. But TJ Watt is just a beast. He's only gonna get better with time, and it's gonna be fun to watch. If he can get half of what JJ's size is at linebacker position, Badgers could be in some business.
I believe.
We saw.
Oh, go ahead.
We saw Justin Wilcox, the new defensive coordinator, seeing his new game plan, and it worked. And that could be a turnaround for this Badgers defense. And looking at for the year, it could really be a season saver, which was looking kind of bleak going into it. Defensively and even offensively.
Yeah, it didn't look like he wanted to change the defensive plan too much. It still looked like he was bringing pressure. But we talked about TJ Watt, but my dad, Carlos, as you guys I'm sure will hear more and more about, he's kind of a Debbie Downer type. When LSU started driving the ball, he was like, oh, the Badgers are going to lose this game. The Badgers are going to get their butts kicked, blah, 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 blah. But we were talking about it a little bit. TJ Watt, I believe, is a redshirt junior. He redshirted his freshman year. He went out last year with an injury. So he's either a redshirt sophomore or junior, depending on what they give him for last year for being injured, designation wise. But I think just based on his name, if he continues to play as well as he did this game,
Mhm.
He could be an early entry draft. I mean, I know that's a little bit too early to say, but I think just based upon his name, it means a lot for TJ Watt. Um,
Yeah, he still has to play well. We saw Chris Borland. He was an animal. And when he get drafted,
I
sixth
think he
round?
was he was a later round draft pick. Yeah,
But, I mean, he didn't have the name Watt.
exactly.
JJ Watt could even push the Texans and be like, hey, get him. If he's still there in the second round, you're going to draft him.
We've
And
seen crazier things happen. I mean, our team, the Buccaneers, drafted a kicker in the second round. So we've seen crazier things happen, but we're gonna skip a little bit around today. We're gonna go freestyle a little bit. We mentioned Chris Borland. He was a great middle linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. There's a little bit of news coming out of San Francisco camp. If you guys have been, let's say, hiding under a rock for the past week or so,
it's on CNN and everything.
Colin Kaepernick has been making a lot of news recently. A lot of different people have a lot of different opinions on it. I know I have my personal opinion. What do you think about, without getting into it too deep, Brock? I know we're going to talk probably about it a little bit later, but what do you think about the whole cap situation?
I'm gonna go into a little more
standpoint, not an off the field standpoint. Let me stop that a little bit. I'm sorry. What do you think about it from a football standpoint? Do you think it affects his roster spot at all? I know the 49ers said he made the team and he's probably going to be the backup.
He is their backup. I think it could have easily played a part on why he's still on that team. I think a lot of people could agree going into the preseason, they were skeptical on Colin Kaepernick if he was going to have a job or not.
Yeah.
And we found out today that he is now the backup quarterback. Could it play a part? It could have. Do we know? Not necessarily. He still has a great arm. He might not be the smartest.
But it's not dead, quotation marks, as they're calling it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good athlete. I think he deserves a place in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think he handcuffed the San Francisco Giants, or San Francisco, the 49ers, sorry, to keep him. I don't think he really wanted to play anywhere else. He didn't. I don't know. That's his personal thing, and we will probably never know.
Like I said, we have a lot of opinions on it. We'll get to the off the field situation a little bit later. But heading back to college a bit, like I said, we're gonna go a little bit all around the place. A team that I thought was overrated a little bit. I know people might be skeptical, like, oh, he's just saying this after watching the first couple of games. But Tennessee, I was skeptical, about Tennessee. A couple of notes that I had on them going into the season. Obviously, it's a loaded SEC this year. But, Tennessee last year, 92nd in passing in NCAA, which you could see from the first game. There's a reason why they were 92nd in passing. Josh Dobbs has a lot of potential, but he also has a lot of work to do.
He has no weapons either.
Yeah. A huge hit on them last year is that they could not close games, which going to SEC season is a huge issue, obviously. And then also no top 10 wins in the last couple of years under head coach Butch Jones. So a team that I thought was overrated headed into the season struggled, with Appalachian State. Are there any other games this week, Brock, that surprised you as to how good a team played, how good a specific player played? I know you like Lamar Jackson from Louisville, or negatively, how poorly a team played. Are any games this weekend that kind of surprised you? Any players that stood out to you?
Oh, one game that really shocked me and shocked a lot of people. I think everyone expected Northwestern to take that next step and contend for that Big Ten shot at the championship, and they laid an egg like nothing. They could be a bottom feeder again. That was just a terrible loss they took to Western Michigan. Could they turn the season around? Of course they could. It's so early, but that is a loss you can't take going as starting your season and trying to make that next step in the Big Ten. Because the Big Ten, we saw Ohio State put up 70. We saw Michigan put up 70. Maryland put up 50. And you put
Iowa
up,
looks like they're cruising so far.
yeah, Northwestern, you put up 21 points against Western Michigan. It call me crazy, but that's not going to beat many Big Ten teams.
No.
Even Purdue was putting up points.
Now, Northwestern did go against a non-cupcake, but they still played a MAC team. I will say Corey Davis, wide receiver for the Broncos from Western Michigan, one of the better receivers in college football. He had 1,400 yards last year. However, they kept him to 70 yards without a single touchdown today, and they still lost. Pat Fitzgerald, one of the longer tenured head coaches in college football, actually. I think he's been there for 8 or 9 years now. I really like him. He's a former All-American player, but like you said, they definitely laid an egg today. One of the best players in the country, they relatively contained him, and they still lost. Was kind of a disappointment. I know we mentioned it earlier. This team's not a very good team, but Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo lost to a Division II school today. Let me put that in perspective. FCS is above Division II, so I mean that just says a lot. And Buffalo lost to a Division II school. I know it should not happen, and for whatever reason. However, the ex-head coach of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, who's been famous for getting to the championship game, their ex-head coach is actually the coach of Buffalo. So a lot of people think he's under pressure for losing their first game to a huge underdog. A couple of other games of note from around the country. I woke up this morning. I was actually pleasantly surprised at 7 this morning. Georgia Tech and Boston College were playing in Dublin, Ireland. Sorry, guys, you had to deal with that awful Irish accent.
That's pretty garbage.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Georgia Tech beat BC, Boston College in Ireland. Michigan beat Hawaii. Ohio State ran over Bowling Green. In one of the couple of Power 5 conference matches, West Virginia beat Mizzou today in a Big 12 SEC challenge. We mentioned Houston over Oklahoma. Rutgers lost to Washington. That was a popular upset pick on a lot of game day shows this morning, but Washington did.
Washington's a good team.
Yeah, ranked 14th in the country.
Mm-hmm. I got to catch the highlights of that game, and John Ross III. Remember that name? He was injured last year with a knee injury, and freshman year he didn't play much. But he is their big return man and their scat wide receiver. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half for them, and I don't remember if it was 2 receiving, but he did run back a 92-yard kick for a touchdown. And when I mean run, he flew by everybody. There's guys that had angles and weren't even close.
By big, do you mean big as an explosive, or is he a big dude size-wise?
No, he is a small guy but can fly.
So he's like your other guy, your William Likely.
I don't think he's that short, but
all right.
I he was from the highlights I seen. He was blazing fast.
Going into a couple of other games, UCLA fell to Texas A&M in overtime. Another game, guys, my shoulders getting really tired of being dusted off. But another game that I had picked correctly today. Excuse me. Arkansas barely squeaked by Louisiana Tech. And there's a lot of games going on right now, including Oregon over California Davis. The UNC Georgia game. I know that's a game we both talked about, Brock. When I last checked, it was a little bit ago. Georgia had to lead 14-7. I'm not sure where the game's at right now. It's about 7 o'clock Central Time. But who did you have winning that game?
Well, living down here in North Carolina, we get a lot of coverage and a lot of radio talk about North Carolina, Duke, NC State, and a lot of people were high on North Carolina this year, and they have a very, very underrated defense. Which last 2 years ago they gave up like 35 points a game. Then last year they gave up 24. That is the most differential in points in one season by any college football team in the history of college football.
Oh wow! I didn't know that stat.
In one season, they lowered their average by 10 points. And this year, they have a lot of players back that make big plays, and I had North Carolina winning it, and I'm checking it right now. They are actually up 24-21 late in the third, and North Carolina, their defense is the big thing to talk about. They do have a great returner and a wide receiver, Ryan Switzer. He's a big play waiting to happen, coming from like a slot. He's not your big catch over anybody. He's the like Julian Edelman type character.
I was talking to Carlos. Second mention for Carlos today. Let's get that trending on Twitter. #Carlos. I was talking to him earlier. He's a faster, more agile. You mentioned it, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type. He's small, he's undersized. I think he's going to be a good pro player in NFL. I know you're a homer on the defense, but I'm going to talk about their offense for a second. Mitch Trubisky,
Yep.
got a little bit of playing time last year. Marquise Williams, who unfortunately just got cut by the Packers, was a starter for a little bit. But and then they have probably the second best running back in the ACC behind Dalvin Cook from Florida State in Elijah Hood. So UNC was one of those teams that I have that I thought was underrated heading into the year. Now they are ranked 22nd, excuse me, but looking to see what they do the rest of this year. I knew you'd have an interesting perspective on it. Being that you're based in North Carolina now, but
yeah, you mentioned Elijah Hood is one of your favorite running backs in the ACC, but TJ Logan in that backfield is also a very hard runner, and that 1-2 punch could be one of the biggest keys for North Carolina's success this year, given that it's Trubisky's first season back there.
Yeah. Now, like I said, I picked UNC to win that game. There's a couple of other games going on between tonight and tomorrow. We're going to call those quick. Like I said, we're calling these at about 7 p.m. Central.
Hang on.
Oh, go ahead.
I have to switch it over to the Georgia Bulldogs for 1 minute. I know he is probably one of the best running backs in college football. Nick Chubb, he is finally back from that injury last year, and right now he has 27 carries for 154 yards. For his first game back from injury, that's a huge workload, and I got to watch like the first half of the game, and he he is explosive as ever, and he could be one of the big running backs in this next year's draft. I would assume he would come out.
Yeah,
And
let me say this. I know during the Oklahoma game, there was a lot of talk about how Oklahoma has the best backfield in college football. I think Georgia's up there between Nick Chubb, even though coming off of injury, and Sony Michel, who has one of the great names in college football, by the way. They have one of the best backfields in college football. Nick Chubb, I think, as long as he can stay healthy, will be a mid-round pick probably in this year's draft. And even if he doesn't stay healthy, look at Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley came from Georgia off an injury, and look what he's doing in the NFL. But before I move on, Brock, before I rudely interrupt you again, do you have anything else on any of the games we talked about?
not really. You pretty much touched on everything. We touched on everything that I wanted to even talk about.
Right.
I would say one more is Stanford. Stanford got a win the other night. It wasn't the prettiest win, but it was.
Technical difficulties, folks. This is live.
But it was a good sign for Stanford fans because they do have a first-year quarterback and half their line is new, and they still won 26-13, I believe it was. Christian McCaffrey looked great, like always. That's all they really need to do is block for him and let him do all the work, really. But
yeah, check out the Twitter page. Christian McCaffrey had a absolutely ankle breaking, and ankle breaking is probably a little bit of an understatement. Ankle breaking, knee breaking, any lower body limb or ligament that defender had from Kansas State is probably completely gone. But Christian McCaffrey looked impressive yesterday, for sure. But going forward to the rest of today and tonight, there's a couple of games that we need to look out for. A couple of games that we're calling. I'm gonna tell you the matchup, who's favored, and what the over/under is, Brock. And I want you to, at the very least, obviously, give me who's gonna win that game. If you want to participate in the over/under, go ahead. I know we don't live in Atlantic City or Vegas, so we can't pull the over/under. But we'll start with the biggest game, arguably, of the first week. USC Alabama. Alabama's 11.5-point favorites, and the over/under is at 54 points. Who do you have in this game?
This is probably the toughest one to bet on this week, I would say, out of all of them, pretty much. I do think USC wins this game. I really do. I feel like they're back to the USC of old, all their playmakers that they have. It's just if they can get Max Brown to be consistent at quarterback and get the ball to their playmakers, I feel like they're going to be tough to beat. I just don't think Alabama's doing it this year. Alabama hasn't impressed me a lot in recent years. They've had some really good players. Their quarterback play is never great, just good enough to win. They always have that dominant running back, which I don't know if they can have that this year. We'll find out because they lost Derrick Henry. We'll see who can fill the void, but I do have USC winning this game. It's not going to be a blowout.
I tried not to stop you there.
It's not going to be a blowout.
To quote the great Stephen A. Smith of ESPN, "You are so disrespectful. So disrespectful." Alabama is arguably the best team in college football, and they will run away with this game and win by at least 2 touchdowns. Nick Saban is the best coach in college football, hands down. As much as I don't like him, I have to admit, best football coach in college, period. They have a lot of really good receivers. They have a good defense. When I look at the only thing that would stop from Alabama from winning this game would be the fact that they have an inexperienced quarterback starting. But you know what? You already mentioned Brown from USC. So I think that Bama wins this game, and I think they win this game pretty easily in comparison to what they'll face in the rest of the SEC schedule. So I'm actually pretty surprised you went with USC there. It might be the North Carolina-ish in you starting to come out with the SEC hating in ACC country. But we're gonna move on to the ACC next. Clemson, Auburn. Clemson 7.5-point favorites. How are you seeing that game going down?
I'm giving it to Clemson, even though it is in Auburn, which is always a tough place to play. We've seen that many times in the last couple of years. I just think the Clemson offense is going to be way too much for Auburn to handle this year. Clemson is number 2. They're clearly, they could obviously fight for that number 1 spot right now before the games even are being played. I really think Clemson and Deshaun Watson are going to pull out the win on this one.
I'm gonna keep it pretty simple and just say I agree. I think 7.5-point favorites is probably a little bit too low. I think they win by at least, again, 2 touchdowns there. This next one, not as big of a game as a couple of the other ones that we've mentioned, but BYU at Arizona, 2 Power 5 teams. I'm gonna go first on this one. Arizona is 1-point favorites. I think BYU takes this one by about a touchdown. Taysom Hill. If you look back on my personal Twitter page at Mataponte, self-promoting again, sorry.
Not worth it.
I tweeted back a couple of years ago that I believe that Taysom Hill will be a dark horse Heisman candidate. He hurt himself this year, but Taysom Hill is a 26-year-old senior quarterback from BYU. He went on a couple of missions. I think BYU takes this one in the desert. Temperatures are expected to be at about 100 degrees for kickoff. But I think BYU takes this one.
Yeah, I don't know that much about either of these teams, but I would also pick BYU, given in the last few years they've always been known for their defense linebacking crew. I just feel like their defense once again will step up and bring home the win for BYU.
If it makes you feel any better about this one, Aaron Rodgers also picked BYU this morning on ESPN's College Game Day. Not because of anything on the field, but because former Packer great Brady Papinga would give a great pregame speech to the BYU Cougars. So we're in good company with cowboy mustache Aaron Rodgers. Next, Notre Dame, Texas. Notre Dame's 3.5-point favorites.
Texas is rebuilding, and we're gonna see how well they do this year. But I do think Notre Dame takes this one. Their offense is always one of the top offenses in the nation, and I think they will continue to do big things this year. I'm not necessarily going to say they're going to make the Final Four, but I feel like it's going to be a team to watch, definitely.
Yeah, they have a QB, 2-quarterback system going with Malik Zaire and Deshaun Kaiser, so a lot of people are kind of hesitant about them, but I agree with you. And the last one, let's just go with the pick on this one. I think we will probably both agree on this one, but Ole Miss, Florida State. Florida State is 4-point favorites. Who do you got?
I got Florida State. It's at Florida State. It's at Florida State. They are returning so many starters from the last year, and they're one of the top 4 teams. I feel like they will make the Final Four this year. They're, I think, one of my number 1 contenders for the championship this year.
All right, let's try something here. Name the best player or the player to watch out for from the Ole Miss Florida State game on 3. Let's see if we can be cute here, Brock. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Dalvin Cook. No.
That's all. It was close. But
yes, Dalvin Cook, Heisman candidate player. Looking forward to see what he's doing this year.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Final Four. I know we've been keeping everyone waiting from last week, but let me hear your Final Four, Brock. Let's just get the Final Four. You give me yours, I'll give you mine, and then we'll go through and give our explanations in case there's any surprises in there for the listeners.
This I bounced around with 4 teams. You could easily put 7, 8, 9 teams in here if you really got down to it, especially with these games that we just seen so far. But I already said before, I think Florida State will be there. I think Ohio State will be there. Stanford, I think, will pull together and will be there. I think Oklahoma will shake off this loss and will be there. Those were in no particular order and how they will be ranked, but I think Oklahoma will do enough to make it up back into the Final Four.
So again, you have Oklahoma, Florida State, Ohio State, and Stanford.
Correct.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw in there that we only have one team in common in the college football playoff Final Four. That one team who I picked to lose today, Oklahoma. I have they'll bounce back. Otherwise, I have Alabama, who I think is going to win the SEC. I think if it's not Alabama, whoever wins the SEC is going to the college football playoff. Clemson, I have winning the ACC. You have Florida State, most likely. I have Clemson. And then the last team, my second favorite team outside of the Wisconsin Badgers, I have the Houston Cougars getting to the Final Four. They have one more tough game against the Louisville Cardinals, but I think they have a chance. And if they win out, there's no leaving them out of the Final Four this year. Where in past years you've had non-Power 5 teams get in with no really good win.
Mm-hmm.
Houston took out Oklahoma. Now let me give it a SEC champs, ACE champs. I think they get in, regardless of who would get enough to get into the college football playoff. But the one loss I had them losing was against Houston. But the reason I have that because I have both the Pac-12 champs and the Big Ten, Ohio State, both losing 2 games. I think with those 2 teams having a conference championship game and Oklahoma not having a conference championship game, so that's my little bit of explanation I have for my 4. Again, Clemson, Oklahoma, Alabama, as Brock said, in no particular order.
Just quick sidetrack. Dylan booked AP.
Yep. For everybody wondering what Brock was talking about, the first 4 picks in our fantasy draft went Adrian Peterson, Antonio Brown to yours truly, Brock, Julio Jones, Todd Gurley. So, 4 of the top players in fantasy going in the top 4. I have I believe 7th pick overall, so I'm waiting to see who I'm able to draft. So,
give me Tebow.
Dylan typically goes homer, so we're kind of surprised he didn't go Demaryius Thomas or Trevor Siemian, number 1 overall. As ridiculous as that sounds, Odell Beckham Jr. just went number 5 overall. We're on the NFL, so why not get to a couple of other things, Brock? What do you think? You want to talk Teddy first, or you want to talk Packers first?
Let's talk Packers. Packers are always number 1. Don't put the Vikings first.
Packers, big news out of Packers camp. Let's start off with they kept 3 quarterbacks for the 3rd straight year, which I was surprised with. I wouldn't say it's a negative surprise, but surprised nonetheless.
Yeah, Joe Callahan at that too.
Yeah,
which he did. He played pretty well.
Yeah,
I will give him that.
He definitely played well enough to make an NFL team. But I will say, I think there's bigger needs that the Packers could have went and went forward to or looked at. And with that includes Josh Sitton, former All-Pro, Pro Bowl guard, getting released today. What are your thoughts on that? I know you don't get to watch the Packers too much, but what are your thoughts on the Packers releasing a top-notch, All-Pro caliber, like I said, player like Josh Sitton?
I would have liked them to keep him, just mainly because even if he doesn't play, he's a good guy. He's in the locker room. He's going to teach these kids how to be a professional, how to have the NFL body and the NFL work ethic. I would have liked to see him. I didn't want to see him go. I was very surprised when I got that update saying Josh Sitton is gone. I was like, what? Why? Like, I feel like we should have kept him. We could have let at least one more person go. But I would have liked to see Sitton stay.
Yeah, definitely agree there. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but even if they weren't able to, even if they didn't expect him to be a starter, which I'm surprised that they didn't, why not try and get a 3rd or 4th round draft pick out of him? I know this is a surprise to mostly everyone, as far as I'm aware, but a couple of other roster notes. Bears did keep 7, including Trevor Davis, who we both really like. They also kept Elliott, a player that we both really like. 6 undrafted, which was not necessarily nice. Ted Thompson is a very pro who he picks up, whether the agency. So a lot of big names in general I don't think we can expect the Packers, unfortunately, to go after many, if any, of them. But speaking of biggest news from the NFL over the course of the past week, revolves around the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Teddy Bridgewater, as unfortunate to Vikings fans, tore his ACL from all reports. So he tore his ACL as well as dislocated his knee. Out for the year at the very least. Now, what the Vikings did with that is they went out and they traded a 1st-round draft situation.
Obviously, you feel bad for who gets that serious of an injury. Not ACL, it's all their ligament damage. So you feel bad for him. And for the Vikings, it's a big blow to them. Because I feel like he was just starting to come into his own, get more comfortable with players. Adding Treadwell was big. He is always there, so I mean, he's always one that you want to turn around, hand off the ball. It's big for the Vikings. Not just the Vikings. You've seen that the Vikings, with them losing Teddy Bridgewater, now the Packers are projected to win all 16 of their games. That's how big of a difference they thought Teddy Bridgewater was going to be. Like they said the Vikings could probably beat the Packers twice, or at least once. So that's how big of an injury that could affect the Vikings. Now they traded for Sam for Mr. Glass himself. They gave up a much for him, I think. They could have waited because everyone's getting cut. They could have picked up somebody that somebody didn't want, like Mark Sanchez, even though now he's going to the Cowboys. he could have been a good pick up for the Vikings, and they still would have the first round pick. What are you picking?
Yeah, excuse everyone. We just had some technical difficulties there. But I definitely agree with what Brock was getting ready to say about how the Vikings gave up a little bit much to get Sam Bradford. I definitely didn't pick the Vikings to win this game before the year. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how, or excuse me, I didn't pick the Vikings to win or to make the playoffs, before the year started. So I guess we'll have to see how that turns out. But we're gonna skip ahead a little bit. We're gonna introduce a new section to the Jock Talk podcast. It's gonna be called 2-minute drill. Each of us are gonna get 2 minutes to more or less rant or get off our chests about anything that's bothering us in the sports world. Now, Brock, you being the away team in the Jock Talk podcast.
No, you go first.
Brock,
you go first.
All right.
I want to hear what you have to say.
All right. I figured I would give the folks a little bit of a breather before I rant on, but let me get started here. Can we get the clock going? Let me get one here. 2 minutes started right now. All right, 2-minute drill. You know what bothers me, Brock? Cadence. Hands football. You look at the USC Trojans and just every college football program around the country. To all you players on scholarship and just people in general, quit doing stupid stuff. Quit sexually assaulting people. Quit smoking pot when you're on a full scholarship. Quit carrying a loaded gun with you in a car. There's no need. You're saving yourself $200,000 by going to school and playing football. Quit doing stupid shit. Excuse my French again. NFL. Raise the 53-man roster. Take it to 60 people or give teams more time to narrow the rosters from up to 90 to 53. Give the teams more time. Targeting in college. I hate the college football rule as much as I was rooting for Oklahoma today. There was a bad ejection just because a player targeted, meaning leading with his helmet. And also in the Tennessee game last night, their defensive leader ejected on a punt return because the punt returner had to go to the ground to catch a ball. That needs to be more like the NFL of sorts, where it's a 2-strike rule. They need to adjust the targeting rule in college. I know it's meant to help players, but adjust it. And then the last thing, players in college, quit transferring. If you're not good enough to start at one school, suck it up and wait. I mean, I can understand if you're a graduate assistant and all you want to do is win. Take Russell Wilson, for example. He went to go play college football or professional baseball. Couldn't make it. Came back, transferred to Wisconsin. But college football players, quit transferring. Wait your time or suck it up and admit and get real with it that you're not good enough. Sorry, guys, but that was my 2-minute drill. Brock, what do you got?
All right. I know everyone's probably already sick of hearing this, but Colin Kaepernick, my take on Colin Kaepernick. Do I think he's wrong for sitting it? No. He has his right, like everyone says, he has his right. He can do what he wants. That's the freedom. Could he have done it a different way? Of course. But if he really feels like he has to do this and say the things that he needs to say, we as Americans should be not offended by him saying those things. We should be offended that he feels that way. We as Americans need to come together and stop all this segregation or all this other stuff. We need to come together, quit putting race in that, and just come together as one and quit hating and quit being so disrespectful. Everyone is so disrespectful and ignorant to each other just because of their race. Everyone puts everything aside, put that on the back burner, respect your neighbor. Everything's going to be good. I'm offended that he feels that, like, no one should feel like they are oppressed. No one should feel like they are being looked down on. It's disgusting what America has come to. Yes, they're getting paid all this money and all this stuff, and he's trying to set an example. Like, that example might not have been the best way to do it, but he's at least saying stuff that people are too scared to say and admit that's happening in America now. All we have to do is respect each other, respect others' opinions, and just move on. Just put everything aside and just grow up. America needs to grow up and quit being little pansies about everything, and just take responsibility for your own actions and quit egging other people on in protests, like in all the riots. Just, why are we rioting? Make it peaceful. Colin made it at least peaceful. And everyone else that wants to go beat up other people and riot and loot all the stores, which that makes no sense to do. You're just making a worse picture for yourself and how people think of you.
Yeah.
Be peaceful like Colin Kaepernick and stand up for what is right. And if we all could do that, I would see no problem.
Yeah, definitely agree with you for the most part. Agree with the fact that he did the right thing. Did he do it in the best possible way? No. Could it have been worse? Yes. Gonna mention Carlos for the third time today. Hashtag Carlos on Twitter at Jock Talk.
Oh, Carlos.
WINC. If this would have been Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, not just white quarterbacks, say Tony Dungy, one of the most respected African American players or coaches or anything to do with football ever. If this would have been any of those guys, would it be as big of a story? If it would have been, not even depending on the race, if it would have been Colin Kaepernick 3 years ago, would this be as big an issue? Or would we be praising Colin Kaepernick for being the athlete who took a stand? That's the only opinion I have on that. To end the show, guys, we're going to finish with something new. A really awesome website and program that I want to get everybody familiar with. It's called whatifsports.com. It uses algorithms and math. Nobody likes math, but they do it behind the scenes to simulate any matchup that you've ever wanted to see in any sport, whether it be hockey, college football, college basketball, NFL, baseball, NBA. You can create your own dream team for NBA. So if you want to see how LeBron's Olympic team from 4 years ago competes with the dream team from 1992, go ahead. That's whatifsports.com. But myself and Brock each chose a team that has been dominant over the course of the past decade and decided to put them up against each other. Brock, who did you choose?
I forget.
Brock chose
because we picked the same one, so I was just like, oh, we'll go with this one.
Brock chose the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. For those of you who are unfamiliar, that's a team with Clinton Portis and Frank Gore at running back, Andre Johnson at wide receiver, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow at tight end. So pretty stacked there. I chose the 2005 USC Trojans. That's the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush era. Excuse me. They're going to be playing on a neutral field at 85 an 85-degree temperature, no precipitation, and a light wind. Because this website goes into detail. Again, whatifsports.com. Follow them on Twitter as well. I'm a huge fan. And we'll see what the result is. Any predictions, Brock? 05 Trojans, 01 Hurricanes?
01 Hurricanes by like 20 points.
01 Hurricanes by about 20 points. It was not that far of a game. However, the UNC Trojans jumped ahead 21-7 in the first quarter, and Miami made a game out of it. However, the final score ended up being 44-43 USC over Miami.
Oh, wow.
In that game, Lendale White rushed for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Miami Hurricanes. Clinton Portis, ended up rushing for 164 yards. So, again, What If Sports Game of the Week. You can hashtag that at What If Sports Game of the Week. Let us know what you guys want to see for next week. If you guys have any topics that you guys want to hear next week, or if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any opinions on this week's college football games or NFL preview, I guess, looking forward to week 1 of the NFL season, let us know at Jock Talk WINC. You got anything else for everybody tonight, Brock?
I just feel we're going to be on a different day. Usually we upload Saturday, Sunday. We'll probably be up, Wednesday or Thursday. We both have things coming up on next week, Saturday. So podcast will be up a couple days earlier than usual. So stay tuned for that.
That's right. Thank you for reminding us. And with that, I guess we'll talk to you guys next week sometime. And we'll see you later.
I can't believe Dylan picked AP.
Yeah.
It's fucking reach. I don't know. I don't even know what these are.
Yeah, I almost forgot about I did forget about the draft. Thank God I didn't make a pick. I didn't miss a pick. I don't think I did. Oh my God! What the fuck is Ryan doing?
Why?
Did you see Ryan's pick?
That's Pokey. Pokey picked CJ Anderson. No, I didn't.
Before that, pick 33.
No.
Oh God.
Who'd he pick?
Wait, I want to see your reaction.
What's his team name?
Team Goat. God.
Darrell Green Beckham? Why? Did he think it was Odell?
He must have. Oh my God. Oh, fucking Ryan.
Shit. I have.
Oh my.
Who do I pick? Shit. Cam Newton got picked right before me.
You're up next, or you're up right now.
Yeah. Cam Newton got picked right before me.
There's a couple of guys I won't pick. Don't go Carlos Hyde or
no.
Thomas. Who picked Thomas Rawls?
How much time? Nope. 20 seconds? Shit. Fuck it. I'm gonna pick
Jarvis Landry.
No. Calvin Benjamin.
Oh God. The guy you don't like for this year, Brock.
Did I? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, if he has a big year, he has a big year, so I don't really